It's last minute cramming time, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we are going to go through and give you our updated top 36 running backs for fantasy football this next year. Starting off with the tier 1 guys, these are players that have to go in round 1, right? I mean, we already know about Christian McCaffrey's elite level ceiling. You go back to 2019, 150 total yards per game. Probably not going to get the same level of running back with the split that you'll have with and without Elijah Mitchell. But with that being said, I mean, this is going to be so much of a better offense that even if he sees a smaller percentage of this backfield, the touchdowns may actually go up in comparison to what they were in Carolina over the past few years. Now, our next guy will be Bijan Robinson. Hook 'em horns, you know he's my guy. Now, I will admit, we are very biased, and the number one reaction people are going to have with Bijan Robinson here is, well, Mason, come on, you clown. Don't you know that rookie running backs always disappoint when they go round 1? That was true with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's the most recent example. But before that, I mean, you had these same level prospects as guys like Leonard Fournette, Saquon Barkley, Adrian Peterson, Ezekiel Elliott coming out of school as Saquon Barkley. And there, you had the running back 2, the running back 7, the running back 3, the running back 5 finish from a points per game perspective. And he just doesn't have the same red flags that you're going to see with Austin Eckler. Whereas with Eckler, you're now pushing 28 years old. Historically speaking, this is when you expect to fall off for these running backs. I mean, even if we go through and look at the road of his screener and have an example of all running backs that posted a similar age 27 season to Austin Eckler and what they did the following year. I mean, you had these RBs going from, Curtis Martin at 19 points per game down the following season to 18.5. You had David Johnson going from 16 points per game down to 12. You had Deuce Staley going from 16 points per game down to 10. You had Lamont Jordan going from 21 points per game down to 8. You had Liddell Betts going from 15 points per game down to 5. Now, of course, I'm not expecting Austin Eckler to be scoring single-digit points on a per-game basis this next year, but, I mean, throughout all of history, we see running backs are declining at this age, while at the same time, they add in Quentin Johnston, so they have another weapon in the passing game, and naturally, you are going to see Eckler's involvement go down anyway, as it was boosted last year with no Mike Williams. The man averaged 10.5 targets per game with Mike Williams, only at 6.5. With and without Keenan Allen, he was at 9.3, down to 6.2. So the targets were already going to come down with the healthy pair of these wide receivers. But as you add in Quentin Johnston, I mean, I just have enough red flags to rank him behind Bijan. Now, our next guy will be Barkley. No red flags. RB5 from a points per game perspective last year, 15% team target share. So running back that if you look at his historical comps, you have actually guys getting better the following season. You had DeMarco Murray going from 2013 to 2014, bump it up from 18.5 points per game to 23. You had Frank Gore going from 17 points per game up to 20. Now, of course, you have some declines, such as Ezekiel Elliott, but you don't have the complete drop-offs that you do with some of these other running backs. Yeah, so I'm going to be fading a couple of these running backs that are now 28, 29 years old. Nick Chubb, you don't have to be that concerned about his age. Now, he's a little bit on the older side, and at the same time, it's a running back that didn't have a massive target share last year, right? 6.85% of his team's targets. Even if this goes up with no Kareem Hunt, at the same time, we can at least admit that it's a little bit of a red flag. Now, our next guy will be Pollard. Obviously, we had Tony Pollard as well as Ramondre Stevenson ranked very low. If you compare these rankings a month ago, I was fading both RBs just because I was worried about Dalvin. I was worried about Ezekiel Elliott. I was worried about JT. I was worried about Fournette. I was worried about Hunt. Well, it looks like Pollard dodges those bullets, at least for the time being. He was a running back 9 from a points per game perspective last year. Now you remove Ezekiel Elliott, you can be excited. Derrick Henry is our next guy. Now, with Derrick Henry, he is elite. He is an outlier if we've ever seen one before. But we've also seen other elite level running backs going into their age 37 decline across the board. You had Arian Foster going from 21 points per game, getting injured the following season. You had LaShawn McCoy going from 20 points per game down to 16.5. You had Curtis Martin going from 19 points per game down to 15. You had Marshawn Lynch going from 19 points per game down to 12. You had DeMarco Murray going from 18.5 points per game down to 11.5. So across the board, we've seen throughout history, running backs at this age with this kind of profile are going to decline going into their age 30 season. At the same time, this should be the worst offensive line in the NFL. Now, of course, it all depends on the price point. Round 1 of ESPN drafts, do not draft them. If you're going to get them at the 2-3 turn in your underdog draft, pull the trigger. Now, our next guy will be Josh Jacobs. With Jacobs, it sounds like he is going to be back with the team. Obviously, it's a running back that doesn't have a lot of leverage in this situation. I'm still drafting Jacobs. I'm still drafting Taylor as if they are going to play this next year. Now, the reason I'm going to have Jacobs ahead of Taylor now is just because we don't know the situation with Taylor, right? At the time of this recording, this is a running back that's rumored to get traded to Miami. This is a running back that's rumored that the Colts aren't going to move. We don't exactly know what's going on. So just with the inherent current uncertainty, I do want a little bit of a discount if we're going to draft JT. But if we look at the contract situation, I'm very confident that he's playing this next year. So if you're in like an Underdog best ball tournament, right, where it's a $6 buy-in, $100,000 first place prize, and you're going to get Jonathan Taylor round 3, for the love of God, pull the trigger on him there, just because, I mean, if this man were to find a good landing spot last year, remember, he was the #1 overall player in fantasy football in drafts, and he has that kind of upside again. Now, of course, if you want to go and get into one of those Underdog drafts in which we are drafting every single night on this live stream, you can find that link in the comment section. You can find that link in the description. If you sign up to Underdog with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, you're going to get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, get a free trial to flockfantasy.com where you can find our 2023 fantasy football draft guide. And also, I got y'all set up week 1, Bills against the Jets. You have a free Josh Allen special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard, only for people who use promo code FLOCK on Underdog. Now, going over to our next guy, we are going to have Travis Etienne. All comes down to the price, right? Because this is a running back that I'll say he has some positives on his profile. Former round 1 pick, still on his rookie contract, in a great offense. I think we can assume that he gets a little bit better as a pass catcher this next season, but at the same time, he does have his red flags. Tank Bigsby is probably going to see about 30% of this backfield. While we want to assume Etienne does improve as a pass catcher, he did only average a 7.5% team target share last year. So I really like Etienne if you can get him at a nice discount. Like in those Underdog drafts, I'm getting Travis Etienne in the 4th round, and he is one of my most drafted running backs at that price point. However, if you're going to have to take him at like the 2-3 turn in a Yahoo draft, just don't do it. Now, our next guy will be Ramondre Stevenson. So initially, once we had Ezekiel Elliott sign in Dallas, I did move Gibbs ahead of Ramondre Stevenson, but then I really thought about it and I was saying, okay, well, you know what? David Montgomery's probably better than Ezekiel Elliott at this point. We know that this is a situation where Ramondre has already demonstrated his elite receiving down upside at the NFL level, having a 16% team target share this past year. Whereas with Jahmyr Gibbs, we're pretty damn confident that he can do it, but we just haven't seen it before. So if you're in your regular redraft format where we would assume that the rookie is going to start a little bit slower, I probably would go Ramondre over Gibbs. However, if you're in that Underdog tournament where you're trying to win $100,000, right, you are wanting to optimize for weeks 15, 16, 17. So instead, you probably do go Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, our next guy will be Joe Mixon. With Mixon, he's just going to continue to rise. He's won the offseason. Early on this offseason, he went round 7 of Underdog drafts. But since then, we've realized, okay, well, yeah, they reconstruct his contract, so he's playing in Cincinnati this next year. While on top of this, it's a running back that now is no longer in legal trouble. He's younger than guys like Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb. I mean, this is a running back that last year was the RB6 from a points per game perspective. The season prior, he was the running back 7. Now, he was inefficient last year, which is why we're going to be moving him down here just a bit. But nonetheless, I'm still very happy in drafting Joe Mixon at his cost. Now, our next guy with Najee Harris, there's a big divide. High-stakes drafters want no piece of him. If y'all saw our $500 draft on the live stream the other night, I got Najee Harris in the middle of round 5 in an Underdog draft. However, if you're in your regular home redraft format, there you actually may see Najee Harris go at like the 2-3 turn. And I will say there are enough red flags where you're not excited about drafting Najee in the 2nd round, right? Where if you look at what we've had through his first 2 seasons trajectory, he really does comp to be like James Robinson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But to be fair, we can say, okay, well, last year, this is someone that was dealing with the Liz Frank. We can say at the same time that last year, this is a running back that was behind a very bad offensive line that had a rookie quarterback / Mitchell Trubisky. So I think we can assume that the situation's probably going to be a little bit better this next season. He's going to be a little bit healthier at the same time. Now, it doesn't get away the red flags completely, which is why you just have to be very reasonable when you draft Najee Harris, right? We can't assume that he's immediately a top 10 running back yet again, but I don't think he's destined to be the next Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, our next guy will be Jahmyr Gibbs. With Gibbs, full PBR specialist, right? This is a running back that had 44 receptions in 12 games played for the University of Alabama this past season. And anybody you talk to will say, he's Alvin Kamara. He's Alvin Kamara. He's Alvin Kamara. He's behind an elite offensive line as well. Now, we have seen this coaching staff want to go through and implement a 2 running back committee. And I do think Montgomery has the red zone role at the beginning of the season, which is why I'd say in your regular redraft format, I'd pump the brakes just a bit on Gibbs because I think he's going to start a little slow. And if you think that your league's going to be very active in trades, Gibbs can potentially be a buy low candidate a month into the season. Whereas if you're in one of those Underdog tournaments where you are trying to optimize for the highest ceiling in weeks 15, 16, 17, there instead, you maybe move Gibbs to the top of this list. Now, going over to our next guy, Breece Hall is another great example of that, right? With Dalvin Cook going over, I think Dalvin actually is a pretty large role week 1. So it really comes down to what are you trying to optimize for? Are you going to want to take someone that increases his fantasy football value immediately when the season starts? Or are you going to want to take someone that has an elite level ceiling in weeks 15, 16, 17? I think that's going to be very dependent on the format that you're playing on. I think that also with Breece Hall, and I think with Breece Hall, this is a running back that has such a wide range of outcomes, right? That it really does matter. Are we chasing that ceiling or floor? Now, our next guy will be Kenneth Walker at 16. With Walker, I actually really do like Zach Charbonnet, who we'll talk about at the very end of this video, but Walker was my second most drafted running back in fantasy last year, only behind Josh Jacobs. He won us a ton of money, where if you look at the last 14 weeks of the season last year, the only running backs to finish ahead of him from a points per game perspective were Eckler, CMC, Jacobs, Henry, Pollard, Connor, Mixon, Barkley, or Madre. He's fully healthy, so naturally you'd assume, okay, well, yeah, let's get this guy way the hell up in these rankings. The issue is Zach Charbonnet, who we'll talk about later on. And with Aaron Jones, our next guy, I'm off of him right now. I understand, yes, with Jones, RB12 last year from a points per game perspective, but now you have a quarterback downgrade. I know everybody's going to scream, well, Mason, that means they're going to run the ball more. They're going to run. They have to lean on air. No. You want running backs and good offenses. You want sustained drives. You want trips to the red zone. You want touchdown opportunities. And with Aaron Jones, he's going to have fewer of those with no Aaron Rodgers. While at the same time, if we look at running backs going into this age throughout history, according to the road of his screener, every single one of these guys got worse, right? Jamal Charles got injured the following year in 2015. Jamal Anderson got injured the following year in 2001. Steven Jackson, went from 15 points per game down to 12.5. Larry Johnson, 16 points per game down to 11.5. Fred Jackson, 13.5 points per game down to 11.5. Chester Taylor, 13 to 11.5. Joique Bell, 13.5 to 8. Chris Johnson, 15.5 to 7.5. Darren McFadden, 12.5 to 4.5. Now, I agree. Yes, Aaron Jones, very good running back, right? But, we're looking at guys like Jamal Charles, Chris Johnson here as well. The Father Time gets all these running backs. It's similar to what we were talking about with those veterans at the top. I need a discount if I'm drafting Aaron Jones. Now, our next guy will be Miles Sanders, all about the contract. The man gets $11 million guaranteed when nobody in the NFL is willing to sign an RB. Last time we saw him with his coaching staff, Miles Sanders actually caught the ball as well. He had an 11.5% team target share back in 2020 compared to a sub 5% this past season. But I think that was more due to the coaching staff as well as the quarterback play. I actually expect his role as a pass catcher to dramatically improve with the new staff, with the new contract, and with Bryce Young. Now, our next guy will be Dameon Pierce. I've drafted a lot of Dameon Pierce, ladies and gentlemen. This is a running back we used to get in round 6, 7 of underdog drafts. And I was sitting there going, okay, well, guys, I missed on him last year, but he has a quarterback upgrade with Stroud. He proved himself year 1. The Houston Texans don't do anything. They only bring in a backup running back with Devin Singletary. And all of a sudden, now we're going to get him at a cheaper cost? Well, it looks like now he is going a little bit earlier in drafts just because people have realized, yeah, Devin Singletary's the backup. Dameon Pierce played every freaking snap with the starters for the Houston Texans this last preseason game. I think you have to be pretty excited about him. Now, our next guy will be Alexander Mattison, where if you look at the 6 games he's played with no Dalvin Cook his NFL career, the man's averaged 19.5 rushing attempts per game. He has averaged almost 4 receptions per game and over 20 points per game. Now, I would love to say, okay, Alexander Mattison is going to do this the entire season. In reality, you possibly have to be worried about Fournette, Hunt, JT, while at the same time, we just haven't seen him have that role through the course of the entire year as well. So, I think you can reasonably say that the ceiling's very high, but the floor is very low. Now, our next guy will be Dobbins. Dobbins back with the team. You don't have to worry about Dobbins missing. Similar to Jacobs, similar to Taylor, similar to Barkley. Like we said, these running backs have no leverage, right? They are going to play. Now, the thing with Dobbins is he's never really been productive from a fantasy football perspective. I know 21 may seem like a low ranking, but he's had 2 seasons now where he's averaged the running back 33 finish from a points per game perspective. This is an offense that's now supposed to pass the ball a little bit more. We know Lamar's not going to dump off to the running back side of the backfield. So I don't know how much I love Dobbins. And Akers is someone that I only recently started drafting. We started getting a discount on him just because he had a fight in practice. No idea how that works. I don't know why that means he's less valuable in fantasy football. But same thing here. Akers has finished strong in a couple seasons. Pretty much every year of his NFL career has looked like a bell cow the final 4 weeks. But in terms of this offense, it's supposed to be one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Las Vegas has their projected win total at 6.5 for this next year. And at the end of the day, Cam Akers has never been productive. This is someone that you're having to project for set production through the course of the entire year. Now, our next guy will be Javonte. Javonte also wins the offseason. Very similar to Joe Mixon. I mean, really, you only have Samaje Perine brought in as a backup. You kind of need some running back depth here, right? Especially if Javonte Williams is coming off a completely destroyed knee, while at the same time, Javonte Williams is out there playing in the preseason. People were saying that this guy was going to miss half the year. We used to draft this guy past pick 100. Now he looks like he's probably not going to be startable at the beginning portion of the season because we can assume that it's a split with Perine. But by the time we get halfway through the season, I assume that he's going to continue to expand his role. Now, our next guy will be DeAndre Swift. With Swift, I mean, there were rumors that Taylor may be going over to Philadelphia. Obviously, if that happens, RIP DeAndre Swift. Now, yes, Gainwell looks like he's getting some encouraging usage, while yes, reports are coming out saying Gainwell may be the RB here. I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that Kenneth Gainwell's playing over Swift. Now, Montgomery will be our next guy. Montgomery's been falling in these drafts just because Gibbs looks so damn good in the preseason. But I still think that based off this contract, based off how they used their running backs last year, that David Montgomery will have the red zone role. And at the end of the day, we saw this red zone role produce a zillion touchdowns this past season if you are looking at Jamal Williams. Now, our next guy will be James Cook. This was the biggest riser in these rankings in terms of nothing really happening with signings. I mean, this is a running back that went to training camp in an unquestioned backfield playing alongside Damian Harris. Damian Harris gets injured. James Cook looks like the freaking dude, not only in training camp, but as well in the preseason. So Cook has jumped an entire tier for us. He has jumped like 10 running back spots in these rankings in like 2 to 3 rounds in our rankings on flockfantasy.com. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not already a member of the flock, you can be on flockfantasy.com. Just naturally assume most of y'all are. And if you want to join the flock, you can find that link in the description. Over there is where you can always find my top 150 rankings and tiers, all my premium content. And if you sign up to flockfantasy.com with promo code FLOCK, you're actually going to get 30% off any subscription. And yours truly will break down your fantasy football team with the personalized podcast with promo code FLOCK and the Mother Flocker tier. Quick side note, if you're a member of Underdog Fantasy and flockfantasy.com, go put your Underdog username in your account page on flockfantasy.com and you'll get an immediate $10 added into your Underdog account. Now, going over to our next guy, we'll be looking at James Conner. With Conner, back-to-back running back 1 finishes. Yes, and he did this in a very bad Arizona Cardinals offense this past year. But if you look at the actions taken by the Arizona Cardinals this offseason, it looks like they are in full-blown tank mode. I mean, if you look at Las Vegas win totals right now, they clearly have the Cardinals as the worst team in the NFL. It's not even close. It looks less and less likely that Kyler Murray may actually return this year. So I understand we saw a limited split with no Kyler Murray in this offense last year and James Conner looked okay. Well, this is a much worse team than it was last year. I mean, once they add in Caleb Williams and possibly Marvin Harrison Jr. next year in the draft, then all of a sudden, obviously, it's a completely different story in 2024. But he's a veteran running back in the worst offense in the NFL. Now, our next guy will be Rachaad White, also in a very bad offense. At least he has the receiving down role, right? I mean, he didn't really have a massive target share last year, but he had to split the backfield with Leonard Fournette. Now you have nobody playing alongside Rachaad White, and this offense is so damn bad that we can say, okay, well, at the end of the day, I mean, this is a running back that is pretty much guaranteed to not see added competition because, hell, why would they sign Fournette? Why would they sign Hunt? Why would they trade for Taylor? They have no reason. They're playing for 2024. Now, our next guy will be Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, I think you can bump up if you are playing in a very active, regular redraft league where you can make trades during the season. If you are looking at Dalvin, this is a running back that should have a large role with Breece Hall coming off the torn ACL at the beginning portion of the season. But my main issue with Dalvin Cook is Breece Hall will eventually take this backfield. I don't know if it's week 1. I don't know if it's week 4. I don't know if it's week 8, but it's going to happen. And generally, we are trying to score the most points in weeks 15, 16, 17, because that's when the playoffs are. Now, our next guy will be Alvin Kamara. With Kamara, you're getting the 3-game suspension. I think you can actually move him up these rankings if you can put him on the IR. The issue is if you're going to have to roster him for the first 3 weeks down there on the bench and you have a shallow bench at the same time, it's going to limit you actually making moves on the waiver wire. Will just be a little bit less of an appealing draft pick. Now, Brian Robinson is our next guy. I mean, with Brian Robinson, this is a running back that was actually getting involved as a pass catcher in the preseason. That's the number one thing because we already know that he has a first and second down back in this Washington offense. It's a new coaching staff, so we didn't really know how they were going to implement Antonio Gibson, but it looks like Brian Robinson is not going to be a complete zero as a pass catcher this next year, and you have to move him up for that with no McKissick and probably move Gibson down. Now, Pacheco will be our next player, RB31. With Isaiah Pacheco, I didn't think I'd be drafting him at all. I thought people were going to be saying, oh, he's the starting running back going into year 2 for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a guy that's easily a top 20 option. Let's go through and let's rank him at 17. And I thought I was going to be completely out at that price point. But here we can rank Isaiah Pacheco as a mid RB3 and still grab him in a ton of drafts, which is something I've been surprised to find this offseason. Honestly, kind of excited about it because I will say, just in case you were new to the channel, I completely whiffed on Isaiah Pacheco last year. I mean, in the preseason when everybody was screaming, oh, Mason, this 7th round pick out of Rutgers is the man. This is who we need to be drafting. I was laughing. I was going, oh my God, y'all really think due to training camp hype, a 7th round draft pick out of Rutgers is going to be the guy? And he was. Now, our next RB will be Khalil Herbert, who is moving up. Looks like he is the solidified starting running back for the Chicago Bears. He was a massive value when he used to go running back 40 on Underdog. Now when you're seeing him move ahead of like Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Robinson, Alvin Kamara, Rashad White, it's been a little bit harder to draft them because I still think that Roschon Johnson and Deonta Foreman are going to have a role here. I think that with Justin Fields, this will be a quarterback that does not check the ball down to the running back very often, given his own rushing upside, even if it did happen in the preseason for a massive touchdown. Now, Dylan will be our next guy at 33 with Dylan, and same thing with Gibson, and we'll even throw in Zach Charbonnet here. These are all running backs that if you're in a pinch, if you really need to start them, you can, but you're not really ever wanting to start them with a healthy Aaron Jones, a healthy Brian Robinson, a healthy Kenneth Walker. You're more so drafting them because they are the most premium handcuff running backs you can find in the NFL right now. And if you were to have that injury to Kenneth Walker, I mean, someone like Zach Charbonnet could be a straight up league winner. It's a running back that last year in 10 games at UCLA had almost 1,700 total yards. The man had averaged 168 total yards per game last season, and the man had 37 receptions in 10 games played. But I think that's all we have for you in this video. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for checking it out. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to get into a draft with us tonight, tomorrow, the next night, we're doing it every single night on the live stream on Underdog Fantasy. Find that link in the comment section. Find it in the description. Promo code FLOCK. They're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, you'll get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com where you can find our 2023 fantasy football draft guide. And only with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get the Josh Allen special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard against the Jets week 1. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. And I really hope I get to draft you in the live stream later tonight.